Welcome, everyone. This is going to be our fourth part in awaiting Moshiach in the Shemoneh Esrei-V'lirushalayim Ircha to Yerushalayim, your city. And this is going to be the final part on it. And we're going to focus on the conclusion of the bracha, of the blessing. Let's just quickly go through it again, because we had a break from a little while ago. May you return to your city, Yerushalayim, with mercy. May you dwell in it as you have spoken. Build it soon in our days. Binyan Olam, an eternal structure. And may you establish the throne of David and quickly bring it into Yerushalayim. And the bracha concludes, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Bonei Yerushalayim, who is the builder of Yerushalayim. Now, Reb Schwab points out how we don't say, blessed are you Hashem, who will build Yerushalayim, but who is the builder of Yerushalayim, which implies that there is a process of building Yerushalayim that's going on. And that Reb Schwab explains is because that every event of Galus, every event that the Jewish people have gone through in the exile is part of the building or rebuilding of Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem. Every event of Galus, of exile, as harsh as it may be, is part of a foundation for the rebuilding of Yerushalayim, for the rebuilding of the Jewish people. And Reb Schwab uses a parable, makes an analogy, and I'm going to kind of elaborate on the way that I see it. And that is that if you've ever been near a construction site, so there's a big wall in front of the construction site, doesn't let you see what's going on inside. But if you can somehow or another peek through that wall or look beyond that wall, you can see at one point of time this huge, massive hole in the ground. Looks more like destruction than construction. And the bigger the structure is going to be, the deeper the hole for the foundation is going to be. That is a parable or analogy for what goes on in Galus. The big hole that looks like destruction, that big dark hole of Galus, is a foundation for a majestic structure that's going to be rebuilt. But there's a wall in front of it. It's hard for us to see that hole for what it is. The events of Galus, the worldly events, the natural events, what we call the Hester Panim, Hashem's hidden face in Galus, doesn't allow us to see that foundation. We just, it just is what it is. But if we can look through that wall, we can look beyond that wall, then we can see that that big dark hole of Galus is actually a foundation for a structure that will rise so high one day above the wall that will see that structure based on its foundation. Now, we're not able necessarily to explain how each event of Galus is the laying of the foundation for the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. We can't see that. But one day it's going to come to a point where when that structure is going to be built, we're going to understand that how everything was the foundation. It won't just be our emunah, our belief. We're going to understand how each event was another layer, was another laying of the foundation for the majestic structure of the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. So Bonei Yerushalayim, Hashem is the builder of Yerushalayim because it's an ongoing process. I'd also like to share with you now a similar idea that comes from the Sfas Emes. And this is a famous idea. The Talmud states, Kol darshen nivne beis hamikdash b'yamav, any generation in which the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple, was not built in its days, malin alav ki'ilu achriva. It's considered as if that generation has destroyed it. Now, what does that mean? If the Beis Hamikdash was not built in our generation, we've destroyed it? How did we destroy it? And the question that the way that Sfas Emes lays it out is that there were generations that very great people lived in. Chavetz Chaim, the generation of the Chavetz Chaim, the generations of so many great people. So are we going to say that the Chavetz Chaim, because in his generation the Beis Hamikdash wasn't rebuilt, it's considered as if he destroyed it? So the Sfas Emes explains in the following way. And there's a very common saying that goes, every mitzvah is another brick in the Beis Hamikdash. And the Sfas Emes says it in the following way. What do you mean? What the Talmud means is that every generation, it's avodas hakodesh, it's service of Hashem. What it accomplishes in Torah, that is, all of that comes together. Every generation's output of mitzvahs is another layer in the Beis Hamikdash, and every generation does its part to be able to lay another layer of the Beis Hamikdash. The Sfas Emes says it cannot be expected that the final generation, when Moshiach comes, that's the generation that has the merits to bring it. It's not possible. But rather, it's a cumulative. When Beis Hamikdash finally comes, it's going to come in that generation that lays the final layer. But it's only being built on layers and layers that previous generations have laid through their service to Hashem. And each generation has its service to Hashem, for which it needs to do its part in rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash. And that's not necessarily through some kind of focused way of bringing Mashiach. It's about our service to Hashem. Each generation has its service that it needs to do in order to lay another layer in the Beis Hamikdash and bring Mashiach closer. And a generation that doesn't fulfill its obligation, it doesn't do its part, doesn't do the mitzvahs, doesn't accomplish the service of Hashem that it's supposed to accomplish, then that generation has not laid the layer it's supposed to, which means they have perpetuated the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. They're holding it back. They're allowing the destruction to continue. So when it says every generation in which the Beis Hamikdash was not built in its days is as if it destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, it doesn't mean that there's an expectation, at least the way Sfas Emes learns. There's not an expectation for each generation to bring the Beis Hamikdash back. But each generation is expected to do its service of Hashem that it's meant to do, which is meant to be their part in bringing back the Beis Hamikdash, their part in laying another layer towards the rebuilding, towards the third Beis Hamikdash. Now again, do we know exactly what we're supposed to do? Is there anything specific we're supposed to do? We don't know. But the point is, we know what we do have to do. And what this saying of the Talmud is telling us is to realize how important our service to Hashem is. We have to see it in a much bigger context, in a historical context, in making all the difference in the world to the Jewish people, because each generation has its layer of the Beis Hamikdash that has to be laid. It's service of Hashem that it has to do to lay that layer. And if we haven't done what we're supposed to do, then that means we haven't laid that layer. We haven't brought the Beis Hamikdash another step closer. We perpetuated the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And there are things that we're taught. We know if we correct sinas chinam, if we correct dislike amongst each other, it brings the Beis Hamikdash closer. But we have to understand it in a broader context of everything that we do, and how important it is for each generation to understand that their service to Hashem has eternal ramifications for the Jewish people. It has ramifications about how soon the Beis Hamikdash will come back. Because everything that we're doing, as the Sfas Emes mentions, it's Bnei Yerushalayim. Hashem is the builder of Yerushalayim. It's an ongoing process. It happens through our service to Hashem. It happens through the generation doing what it's supposed to do. And that all is part of the process. So we have Reb Schwab's insight that every event of Gullus is laying the foundation. Every mitzvah and service to Hashem that we are doing is laying another layer to the third Beis HaMikdash. And we should realize these are very important principles to understand. It's about our perspective about what goes on in exile. It's about a broader perspective about our Torah and mitzvahs. And not that we're doing Torah and mitzvahs to bring Moshiach, to rebuild the third Beis HaMikdash. But what we do has ramifications for that, huge ramifications for that. May it be that we should be there to merit to do what we're supposed to do, make sure that in our generation we have laid the layer of the Beis HaMikdash that we have that emunah, faith, and trust in Hashem that everything that happens around us is another part of the foundation of the rebuilding of Yerushalayim, and be able to see the fulfillment of Baruch Atah Hashem B'nai Yerushalayim. Blessed be Hashem, build Yerushalayim. We should see Yerushalayim built soon, quickly in our days. This has been a little bit of light. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.